Welcome back to my channel, Simplified English 101. If you are new to this channel, please remember, like this video, leave a comment. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel and ring that good old notification bell so that you can be informed when a new video is posted. In today's video, we are going to focus on how to analyze a literature essay question and, of course, how to write a comparative essay for English literature. This is part 2 of a two-part video. So if you missed part 1, feel free to check that out, or I'll leave a link for you in the description box. Part 1 focuses on the comparative essay and all you need to know, what you need to do. In part 2, we are going to take you through how to write your English literature comparative essay, step by step. The first thing you want to do is to analyze your question. Again, if you missed part 1, we are going to be using the same question, and that was used as the example. The question is seen below. It reads, "This is The Dark Time I Love" by Martin Carter and Dulce Et Decorum Est by Wilfred Owen are both poems that present a horrific picture of the experience of war. Briefly outline the experience of the persona in each poem, discuss the impact that war had on both personas, and examine one technique the writer uses to teach us a lesson about the effects of war. The idea is that for you to answer the essay question the way you should understand what the question wants you to do and how to break down the question. Just as a reminder, what I want you to always remember is that your essay is marked out of 35. 10 marks is given to language and organization, and 25 marks is given to the content, which means that you have to know what you are doing. You have to be able to provide substantial explanation and evidence. The question has two parts. There is a stem, as I mentioned in the previous video, and there are 3 focal points. The 3 focal points are what you are going to be using to develop your body paragraphs. And the stem of the question basically gives an outline of what the entire essay will be about while you develop those 3 points under the stem. The stem of the question is seen as the very first part of the question. Recently, CXC has started writing the questions with the stem of the question separated from the question itself. And it can be identified because it is normally written in inverted quotations, those single quotations. Now, the stem of the question tells you what you are going to be writing about for the entire essay. But for the entire essay, you are going to be focusing on 3 aspects of the stem. For this particular essay, the stem of the question is that it wants you to look at the horrific picture of the experience of war for both poems. What does the essay want you to do overall? Once you look at the horrific picture of war, it wants you to focus on, for the body paragraphs, 1, the experiences of each persona, 2, the impact that war had on each persona, and finally, one technique that is used to teach us a lesson about war and its effects. So this is what the question wants us to do. Now that you understand that, let us move on to another aspect. Breaking down the question is important. For students, sometimes the difficulty is that you have the content. You know what you want to say, but you get so caught up in the moment or probably confused, and you don't do a good job in breaking down the question. I often tell my students, create a skeleton. Your skeleton is going to be the guide for your essay. An easy way to do that is to break the question up in the stem and the 3 parts. You can do so by creating a little table on your question booklet, or for practice purposes, of course, in your book. The basis of comparison, or the stem for this essay, is the similarities or differences of the persona's experience of war. The first thing from the stem is that it wants you to look at the experiences of the persona. In Dulce, we can say that the persona is a soldier. He appears to be educated because of his use of Latin within the poem. Though educated, we see that he was not prepared for what war was going to give to him. We see that the experience was filled with bloodshed and chaos, and these he witnessed. While in This Is the Dark Time, the persona appears to be a citizen of Guyana. He clearly lived in a time when the British invaded this country in 1953. And so he would have experienced the doom that he described in the poem of himself and the people. He would have also experienced some level of bloodshed, as he said in the poem that red flowers bend their head in awful sorrow. From the persona, we can see that his experience was bad and it even affected nature. We can also see that the persona, like others in the poem, felt anxious and oppressed, and they also saw death. So we can see that both personas' experience of war, though different based on the context and the setting and the time, is similar in the fact that it was not good. We want to now look at the second part of the question, which says we should discuss the impact that war had on both personas. In looking at the impact, you want to look at what images or ideas are presented by the poets about how the persona was affected. And in looking at the impact on anything, we can always look at the holistic impact or parts of it. For example, in Owen's poem, we see that war left the persona, along with the other soldiers with him, both physically, emotionally, and mentally traumatized. The impact for him was nothing sweet, as was suggested in the poem. Rather, it was filled with violence. And he gave us many examples, how they looked like dirty beggars and they were emotionless as they moved, and it felt like death was awaiting them. They could not escape it. And it was so bad that even after, he had post-traumatic stress because he kept reliving the moment in his dream. In This Is the Dark Time, on the other hand, we saw that the British invasion of Guyana, it affected the people physically and mentally. The people lost hope, they lost their freedom, and they saw only endless oppression and sadness. For the persona, everything that was good seemed bad, turned bad, and everything that was good or positive was hidden or taken away from them. And of course, this is going to make him sad. He claimed that it was so bad that even the flowers that are associated with joy and happiness, they felt it. They bent their heads in awful sorrow. There was no peace for the persona because of the images of the soldiers constantly around, and these soldiers and their boots of steel and their iron weaponry, and how this was used to destroy and kill the innocent. We saw guns and how it made them miserable, and we saw it was a time of death for the persona. So again, the impact on both personas, we need to look at that. In also comparing and contrasting, we need to look at the technique used. For both, there are many techniques used. Some similarities are that they used imagery, vivid language, personification. For the dark time, they used imagery again, vivid language, pathetic fallacy, irony, personification, metaphor. And of course, I did mention that there are many other similarities and differences, but these are some of the ones that I wanted to mention. Now, what am I going to be using to discuss in my essay? I'm going to be focusing on imagery, since both poems used vivid language and other devices to create the impact of war on the persona. Now, this is just one way to create a skeleton or an outline to break down the question. Another way to do so, of course, is that you can the question as it is on the paper, and you can draw your little arrows and you can put your information in. The information that is presented in this skeleton is the same as the previous, and so I will not go through it with you. All I'm pointing out is that you need to create a skeleton. It helps you in the fact that you will not forget the points that you want to use to develop your essay, because they are written down. Now that we have a better understanding of how to break down the question and to create your outline or skeleton, let us now move on. As a reminder, based on part 1 of the video, when you are writing your essay, you need to, for your body paragraphs, you need to make your point, you need to give evidence, you need to explain the evidence given, then you need to compare, create some kind of comparison, and of course you need to explain this comparison. Of course, you need to also look at the effects on the reader. Now, these are some of the things that you are going to be doing throughout your essay. Let us begin doing this. Remember, your essay must have 5 paragraphs, your introductory paragraph, your 3 body paragraphs based on the 3 tasks that you're going to do from the question, and your concluding paragraph. The first thing I want to point out is that for your introductory paragraph, you need to remember to write 1 sentence that provides some information about the stem of the question, or just mention the basis for comparison. Notice here we have, war is truly the enemy of all humanity, as it can leave lifelong scars and trauma. So this one question basically gives us a little bit of information about the stem. Now that we do that, we want to jump right into ensuring that we mention the poet's or author's name and their work. Both Martin Carter and Wilfred Owen were able to capture the ghastly images of war in their poems. This is the dark time I love, and Dulce et decorum est. Now, once we have our first two sentences, it is now time for us to give a summary based on the question. Once we have our first sentence or two sentences based on the outline, we want to ensure that we create a summary. Now, remember, your summary should not have to be or does not have to be a summary of the entire literary work. You can focus your summary on the aspect of the question that you'll be writing about. For example, this reads, they were able to present war for what it truly is, a monster capable of destroying one's innocence, dignity, livelihood, and freedom, among other valuable things. Carter's poem presents the fear of a people who have been invaded and how war has caused them to lose all hope, while Wilfred Owen's poem is about the horrors that soldiers face on the battlefield, who have been told an old lie that it is honorable to die for one's country. Now, I want you to notice that once we have our summary, the next thing to write is our thesis statement. Now, your thesis statement, remember I pointed out, should be one statement that mentions all the 3 points that you are going to be focusing on. It is a comparative essay, so you want to, of course, remember to use your connectives or transitional words. And notice I have mine written in or highlighted in red. This is just one example of how you can write your thesis statement. Many students find it easier to begin their thesis statement by writing, this essay will outline each persona's personal experience of war, discuss the horrendous impact war had on them, and then examine one technique the writer uses to teach us a lesson. If you have been paying attention, you would have realized that the thesis statement is made up of those 3 focal points. So it should not be difficult to write your thesis. All you need to do is to separate those 3 tasks and use them to write one sentence. The last example of the thesis statement is one that many students like to use, but if you find that you can create your thesis statement without beginning in this cliched fashion, feel free to do so. Now that you see what your introductory paragraph should look like, let us move on to our first body paragraph. Again, remember, this is just an example of what your work can and should look like. We are using the outline as discussed in part 1 of this video, where we are going to be talking about the situation in the first body paragraph for both pieces of work. Now, I want you to notice that we are again using the peel technique. So you are encouraged to make a point that shows a similarity in both poems or short stories. And this point you're making is based on the first part of the question or the thesis statement. Remember, in the thesis statement, we did mention that we're going to be looking at the persona's experience or experiences, which means that one paragraph, and you will talk about the 2 pieces of poem or short story. And in that one paragraph, you're going to be talking about both personas' experiences of. You're not separating the paragraphs. Our first topic sentence is highlighted, and notice that I have begun with a transitional word. Our first sentence says both Carter and Owen's persona had first-hand experiences of war and detail their experiences as brutal and horrifying. This one sentence tells us that in this paragraph, we are going to be talking about Martin Carter's work, we are going to be talking about Wilfred Owen's work, and we are going to be focusing on the persona's experience. What did the personas go through in this time of war? The next thing that I want you to focus on is that once we have mentioned that, you want to now write one sentence that talks about one work at a time. Notice in green I have, in Carter's poem, the persona claimed that his experience of war was dark. And notice that inverted quotation means that the word dark comes from the text. It's a textual evidence. This was highlighted in the title of the poem. This is a dark time I love, and repeated throughout. This implies a time of sadness, chaos, and trouble. Now remember, what you can do in the one paragraph is talk everything that you want to talk about Martin Carter's persona's experience, and then you can use your connectives, your comparative connectives, and focus on the next literary work. Notice that for this particular paragraph, we're going to go back and forth. So we're going to be comparing and contrasting both pieces of work. Now, once I've mentioned Carter's persona's experience, I'm now going to talk about the other poet's work. Notice I've stated that similarly, Owen's title suggests that the persona's experience of war was not just bitter and horrifying, but also a lie told to them that it was good and sweet to die for one's country, which is the translation of the Latin title Dulce et Decorum Est. Owen's persona described in detail the irony of the title as he shows the bloodshed that took place during World War I. You are encouraged to provide an explanation for the point you make. So after you write the point, which is that first sentence, in Carter's poem, the persona claimed that his experience was dark, and Owen's title suggests that the person's experience of war was just not bitter, but also horrifying. You want to give a little explanation for that. Now, once you have done that, it is important that you give textual evidence. Now, I have been giving textual evidence throughout. Notice that even in the explanation, I'll insert a little phrase or word from the different poems to basically further explain what I want to say. But you must give in-text citation. Notice that my in-text citations are all highlighted or written in black. So let's go back through the paragraph. Owen's persona described in detail the irony of the title. He shows the bloodshed that took place during World War I. The explanation given is that once we provide evidence throughout, this can be used as with a direct quotation or paraphrase. The direct quotation used to support the point made above is that we cursed through the sludge, limped on bloodshot, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue. I saw him guttering, choking, drowning, and floundering like a man in fire or lime, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin. All describe some of the gruesome experiences of the persona. Your textual evidence is important. What I want to point out here is that there are times when you give your textual evidence or you give any kind of citation from the poem or short story, and you find that you need to provide a little bit of information or some more explanation, or you want to elaborate on that evidence given. All describe some of the gruesome experiences of the persona. And of course, I felt that I needed to elaborate some more on it. Now, even though we're using the P-E-E-L, please note that the E and the E can always be interchanged and we can play with it a little bit more. So it can be P-E-E-E-L, depending on how you decide to write. A soldier trapped in fire, burning alive, choking on his own blood, the lingering images of torment and hurt in the final moment of the disease are just some of the images presented in the poem Dulce et Decorum Est that the persona experiences. This persona's experience is even more brutal because of the old lie. This lie, presented in the title, hides the untold wretchedness of war, the agony of the soldiers, the repugnance and disgust of war, and presents it as something good. As such, the soldier was not prepared for what he experienced, which made his experience even more devastating. Now notice, I started off with Martin Carter's poem, mentioned briefly the experience. Then I compared Martin Carter's persona's experience of war to Wilfred Owen's persona. Then I gave textual evidence to support that of Wilfred Owen. Then I gave more explanation to support that of Wilfred Owen. Now notice I am going to be returning to Martin Carter's experience, persona's experience. I want you to also notice that you should remember to use your comparative connectives. They're all highlighted in red. I will now begin by saying, unlike the irony in the title of Owen's poem, again comparative, Carter's persona told us from the title that his experience and time of war was a dark one. Again, notice the use of the connectives. Now I'm going to go ahead to elaborate some more on the point I just made about the title of Owen's poem as it relates to the persona's experience. I will write that, like Owen's persona, Carter's presents his personal experience of those of the persons around him. He claims that everywhere the faces of men are strained and anxious, and that even nature has experienced this gruesome effect of war, and is sympathetic to the cause of the people. As such, red flowers bend their head in sorrow. This contributes to the strange invaders whose boots of steel trample the slender grass. Carter's persona presents his experience and that of the people of British Guyana, but during the invasion of the British soldiers. He indicates that his experience of war is extremely dehumanizing as it robbed the people of their culture, nation, independence, and dreams. Now, again, I just want to elaborate for you that in black, I have all of my textual evidences just so that you can see them and how they are placed in the paragraph. My comparative connectives are also there, and the different color-coded sentences shows which sentence is linked to which poem. In concluding our paragraph, always good to restate your topic sentence. So the point which is highlighted in yellow, you want to restate that. Also restating your topic sentence, you want to also think about giving some sort of justification for your point you've made. You can link it to society, or you can also just conclude the point that you have made. Notice again the comparative connective, similarly suggesting that we're going to be talking about comparing one to the other. Owen indicates that his experience of war has robbed him and others of their youth, life, and freedom. Both personas seem to question the purpose of war as their experiences are traumatizing and agonizing. So this is what our first body paragraphs looks like. We're going to now look at our second body paragraph. Notice too that your first topic sentence is highlighted in yellow. The comparative connective is highlighted in red. Notice the use of the textual evidences in black. Now, this paragraph is different from the first paragraph in the sense that we are going to be talking about one poem altogether. And when we finish talking about that one poem, we're going to now compare the next poem in that same paragraph. Both Carter and Owen detail the holistic impact that war had on their personas. In This Is the Dark Time I Love, Martin Carter shows how war can crush the dreams of a people and its country, making them hopeless. This can be seen from the very title that suggests the pain and suffering associated with war. This dark time, as mentioned in the title and the beginning of the first two stanzas, symbolizes the confusion, sorrow, chaos that the persona experienced during the invasion of Guyana by the strange invaders. Additionally, their presence has affected the persona both emotionally and physically, and of course mentally. As the faces of men are strained and anxious, the festival of guns and carnival of misery are present, and boots of steel tramp down the slender grass. These show the violent condition in which the persona must live, the terrible emotions of hopelessness and despair he faces, as well as the oppressive and abusive effects war has on him and the people of Guyana. I just want to highlight to you, since we've read the first part of the paragraph, that our point has been made, which is our topic sentence, the P in peel. We provided explanation for the point we made, so we support the point we made. Then we gave textual evidence to support the point we made. And notice that we only talked about This Is the Dark Time I Love in the first part of the paragraph. Now we're going to be comparing the impact that war had on the other persona in the next work in the same paragraph. It begins by reading, similarly, the persona in Dulce et Decorum Est experiences many inhumane, terrible things during the time of war, which he claims has caused people to lose their sense of value and pride. Like Carter's persona, we are addressed directly and told how war can cause an individual to lose their human dignity. The persona shows the physical effects of war and the soldiers who now are Nina, coughing like hags. Moreover, like the soldiers, he is robbed of his senses because of fatigue and injury, and claims that the effects of war has made them all lame. He claims that all, including himself, could not escape from the repercussions of war even if he wanted to. Furthermore, he claims that war has made them emotionless and passive even when the circumstances are fatal to them. His mental state is also severely affected as the experience of watching other soldiers plundering like a man in fire or lime constantly replays in his dream. Again, I want to highlight that in using your connectives, you use them throughout the work. You want to provide detailed explanation and you want to give your textual evidence. Finally, you want to ensure that you write your concluding sentence. In both poems, the persona's horrifying experience of war has made them hopeless, fearful, and helpless. Additionally, the context and hopeless. Now, I want you to notice that our last sentence in this paragraph, it basically highlights both similarities and differences. The context is different, but the pain and the impact that war had on the personas are the same. Now, let us move on to our final body paragraph. And of course, I will walk you through this. Again, I want you to remember that the topic sentence or appeal is highlighted in yellow. Begin with a connective, of course, again, but there are other ways that you could begin. It reads, both poems use the literary device as a technique to identify or to highlight the effects of war and make bold statements about the immense suffering that war inflicts on innocent people. Once you have made a point that shows a similarity in both poems and or short story based on the first part of your question, it's time to move on to the next. Again, just like the second body paragraph, we are going to be talking about one work, and then in the same paragraph, we'll talk about the next. In This Is a Dark Time I Love, the pictures of soldiers that have invaded British Guiana can be seen as they crawl all around the land. This image is effective as it highlights the vast number of soldiers and their physical appearance. This is also associated with the auditory imagery of boots of steel tramping down the slender grass. The image presented can be compared to brown beetles with hard shells whose sole purpose is to destroy vegetation. When compared to war, the poet is suggesting that, like green beetles, these soldiers will destroy both people and nature. This not only presents a ghastly image of war, but also creates a tone of gloominess and darkness. The use of personification, sun is hidden in the sky, and flowers bend their head in awful sorrow, also helps to create this dark and gloomy atmosphere. The image presented is effective because flowers are usually associated with contentment, cheerfulness, happiness, and growth. However, the poet makes it clear that because of war, even flowers are affected by their disturbing events. The suggestion is to write the first sentence and explain the point you've made. Remember to use your textual evidence throughout the piece if it is possible. Once you make a point, feel free to elaborate on the point. Once you give some sort of textual evidence, you can also elaborate on that textual evidence. Notice that the paragraph, I have discussed the first poem, and then I'm going to now discuss the second poem. Like Carter, Owen has also used both visual and auditory imagery to highlight how war destroys and oppresses the innocent. The image created with the use of the simile, bent double like old beggars on the sacks, presents the soldiers as victims on a battlefield, struggling to stay alive as they are drunk with fatigue. Additionally, they are presented as hopeless and tired in their honorable fight for their country, yet they appear as beggars. Again, Owen uses both visual and auditory imagery to show how war has emasculated and disfigured the soldiers who are now coughing like hags. The nightmare that both personas experience in wartime was so horrifying that war is presented as evil and obscene. By using imagery to present these ghastly images, both poets want us to question the relevance of war and better understand the devastating impact that it has on the innocent. Now it takes us to our last part of the paragraph, where we are now going to tie up that part of the question that wants us to focus on the lessons learned. They, which is both poets, want us to understand how violent and disturbing war is, and that the stories told about the reasons for war and its impact on people's lives are all lies. Clearly, imagery has better helped us to realize that war has no purpose where life exists. Now let us move on to our concluding paragraph. We're going to just run through to the concluding paragraph. You want to first of all restate your thesis statement. It is highlighted in green. You want to summarize the points made, and you want to give justification. Both Carter and Owen presented personas who were devastated by the ills of war, and this could be seen in the poet's use of imagery to paint these ghastly images. We restated our thesis statement. Now we're going to summarize the main point. The experiences of war were devastating, especially when the victims are innocent. The personas and those around them suffered both mentally, emotionally, physically, while others lost their dignity and freedom altogether. Although both poems carry many differences, they highlight how war can impose cruelty, death, distress, and physical and emotional trauma on a people and their country. Both poems questioned the very reasons for war and highlighted twisted notions that there is nobility to enter into war or die for one's country. This is what our essay should look like when we are done. Notice that we have 5 clear paragraphs. Paragraph 1, which is our introduction, our 1, 2, 3 body paragraphs, and of course our concluding paragraph. This has taken us to the end of our video for today. Remember to like this video, leave a comment, remember to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so that you can be informed when I make new postings like these. Until then, bye.